Recording. And thanks everybody for joining us tonight. I'm Dylan Tabish with Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks here in Kalispell. And this is a webinar on the proposed prescribed fire at Lone Pine State Park that would burn approximately 12 to 13 acres, maybe up to 17 potentially at the state park in Kalispell. And this would be a project to benefit native grassland and the overall habitat at the state parks. At the state park, we would be working on this project with our partners, Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, to complete the burn and follow a strategic burn plan written by DNRC that we're going to go into the details here a little bit more tonight with this webinar. But a big thanks to our partners at DNRC for bringing this project forward and working with us on it. And also a shout out that this is being funded by the Montana Forest Action Plan grant. So with that, I would like to go around and introduce everybody before having our Park Ranger Brian Schwartz take it off. Brian, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. My name is Brian Schwartz. The new title they've given us, I'm now a recreation manager, part of the reorganization with Fish, Wildlife and Parks. So as of today, I'm a recreation manager. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Worked hard.
Did you get a raise with that?
No. But I got another park. So yeah, this program, I've gotten to work with Rick for 10 years, starting out at Wild Horse Island a few years ago. And with this project, I won't get into the details because Rick's better at that with this type of project. So, but we've gotten to work cooperatively. He's kind of, I guess, watched over a lot of the forest in Montana State Parks. And I'll let Rick do his intro.
And I'm Rick Moore. I'm retired. That's all that matters. I retired at the end of last year. In my last 2 years, I put together this grant proposal, and we were awarded the grant proposal. So in essence, I'm the author of this proposed project.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick. Way to go. Holly.
I'm Holly McKenzie, and I've been a forester in the Flathead Valley for over 20 years, and I recently slid into Rick's old position as a service forester with the DNRC at the Kalispell unit, and I'm still learning my role here. But I have to say, this grant and project for Lone Pine probably wouldn't have happened if Rick Moore hadn't put so much time into it, because I know it takes some extra time to put a grant together and do all the research and take on that responsibility. And it's a big project up there, and it's a neat one.
Yes,
thanks,
well said. Thanks, Holly. And Dave.
Hi, I'm Dave Pokish. I'm the Kalispell unit manager here at DNRC, and I've had the privilege of working with Rick for his entire career at DNRC, and I'd like to give a shout out as well. I know this project is near and dear, and he's done an outstanding job, and it's a nice legacy of one of many for Rick. So anyway, welcome aboard, Holly, and good job, Rick.
Thank you, Dave.
Nice. Yeah, well said, Dave. Well, without further ado, let's hand it off to Rick and Brian to walk through this project and help explain a little bit of what the proposal is here.
Okay, so we're going to pull up the PowerPoint here.
There you go.
And does that stay there?
I'll get rid of it.
Thanks. Okay, so you'll notice the title is Grassland and Forest Land Management Proposal. There are two parts to this. Tonight, we are only going to discuss the grassland portion of it and the prescribed fire that goes with that. Just to give you a heads up, some of the past management that has occurred on Lone Pine State Park. In 2007, you can see that green tint. There was a commercial thinning done at that time in which trees that were infested with mistletoe were removed, taken to the mill, and turned into boards. In 2011 and 2015, we did mastication projects where a masticator is an impressive machine that in essence chews up trees. And again, we were going after the mistletoe and using that masticator to try and thin the stand, but not thin it so much, because when you do open up a stand with mistletoe being a parasitic plant, just thrives. Again, I'm getting a little bit off because that's this part 2 of this project, but this gives you a little bit of work that's idea of what's been going on lone pine. Here's our proposed what we will be doing, and understand that some things have changed here, and the boundaries of some of these projects may change. It's a little bit nebulous because of some changes that have occurred. But you'll notice what we're going to focus on is that pink portion in the south part of the project, that kind of arc there, and that's where the prescribed fire is. And that's what will occur here, hopefully in the next 3 weeks. So the goal of this grassland treatment is to rejuvenate bunch grasses. The bunch grasses are native to Montana. They are very important to wildlife. They're their own ecosystem, you could say, and they're kind of not greatly disappearing. And I've got a slide that'll show you that, but they're starting to kind of disappear from the landscape between the encroachment of trees and the encroachment of houses. So we want to rejuvenate the bunch grass and then create a variety of phases of grassland arrangement. This will entail treating lone pine and adjacent private lands over time. So this may not be the only time we do this on lone pine, and hopefully we do have some interested adjacent landowners, private landowners, that will also take part in this. And in the future, hopefully we can get some more. Native grasslands comprised of 3 native bunch grasses that I have noticed out there. Rough fescue is by far and away the most dominant one. Idaho fescue is present, but if you go into the forest where there's a little bit of shade, you will find a lot more Idaho fescue. Blue bunch wheatgrass, the state grass of Montana, is also present. And there's another one that I did not list that's probably not as abundant, but that would be western wheatgrass. And all of those are what are called bunch grasses because of their growth habit. Now, this is one when I was back to the fact that I, in my 17 years at DNRC, began to notice that this bunch grass habitat on private lands, I would find remnants of it in the forest, which told me at one time that area had been much more grassland, but the encroaching trees were kind of shading it out, so to speak, and eliminating it. So look at the top photo, and that is 1946. Forgive me, my eyes are not what they used to be. I don't want you to look so much at Lone Pine State Park as I want you to look south of it at that large area that's where there are no trees. Now look down to the 2017 slide and notice how little or how much of that grassland now has converted over to primarily Douglas fir, but also some ponderosa pine. So the historic perspective, a significant conversion from pure grassland to grassland forest. Douglas fir is encroaching into it. The south-facing slopes, ponderosa pine, should be promoted. Approximately 65% of the grassland identified in 1946 now contains Douglas fir trees in various stocking densities. When those trees get too dense, that's when the bunch grasses disappear. They cannot tolerate that much shade. Okay, this is a little bit, the main thing I want you to look at here is that top line. I did my research and found on the Montana Natural Heritage website that this grassland actually is an ecosystem in and of itself, the Rocky Mountain, Lower Montane, Foothill, and Valley grassland. I don't want to go through this. I think you can read it, but some of the diagnostic characteristics: cool season bunch grasses, foothill and montane elevations. That's what we have here. Herbaceous cover greater than 25%, shrub cover less than 10%, graminoid or grasses cover greater than 25%. And that's exactly what we have here. If you look at this farmland conversion, noxious species invasion of noxious weeds, fire suppression, heavy grazing, and oil and gas development are major threats to this system. Obviously, oil and gas is not a threat here, but some of those other things are. Again, I don't want to go through this line by line. I believe you can take some time and read it. You'll also notice that it is a very important ecosystem for a number of wildlife and bird species. This is the area that we're proposing or will be burning. I took these pictures during different times of the year. You can see in that upper left-hand corner really gives you an idea of the bunches. If you move over to the right of that, again, you can really begin to see those bunches. And you'll notice in those pictures, 3 of those pictures, they're in that kind of straw color. That is in their dormant phase. The lower right, you see it in its green, and that is in its spring and summer. And that's when it is most beneficial to wildlife. And when I say that, primarily as a food source for deer and elk, though other species use it for cover and other things. I put this in just so you could see some of the plants, and these are all native. And forgive me, I don't remember the names of all of them. The bottom row, middle picture is blue bunch wheatgrass, and it shows you the profile of that plant and what it looks like. But those are some of the other plants that are also out there. It's not just grasses. So on April 2nd, 2021, we, with the cooperation of one of the adjacent neighbors of Lone Pine, we burned 1/4 of an acre. And you'll see here how that fire burned. It burned very gently. What fire people call backing. It backed into the wind. It was very controllable and really did what we wanted. That was the next morning, when on April 3rd, I came back and took that picture. Now we're going to kind of run through a sequence here of how it changed over time. So you can see black, we're starting to get tiny bit of green, getting more green, still coming on, really coming on. And there it's starting to, you could still see the black, see where we burned, but starting to already integrate into the existing unburned area. Little different, so go to the upper left, was right after the burn, and you'll notice I used that rock to kind of show the slow but steady progression of these grasses to coming back to a green phase. Again, look at the rock, look how vigorous they're coming on. Same thing, just kind of giving you an example of after the burn and over time. Some more, you can see those bunches. Now you'll notice on these bunches, these are all rough fescue. They are what are often referred to as ankle turners. If you are walking through there and you step on one of those bunches, you could easily turn your ankle. They are quite large. In fact, they are arguably too large and are beginning to lose some of their benefit and becoming decadent because of the lack of fire, which is required to keep them vigorous. So here's the burn line. If you look on the left, you'll see the area that we burned on April 2nd. To the right is the area unburned. And right down the middle is the line between the two. So again, we're going to walk through a sequence here showing you kind of how this changed. You can see it coming on. It's greener than the other. Arguably at this point, more tender, more palatable for wildlife, deer and elk in particular. They would like that. Probably has a higher nutrient value at this point than the stuff on the right, which is kind of dry and hasn't really come on yet. You can see now, again, the right on this picture, the right is the burn area, the left is the unburned area. Unburned area is coming on now. You're starting to see more green. Right down the middle, again, left in this instance is the burned, right is the unburned. Starting to look very similar. The unburned or the burned area is starting to resemble the unburned. These are plants that have come on after the burn. We did not kill them. Fire, in essence, does not kill any of the native plants in a fire like this that I'm aware of. And you could check me on that. But most of these plants, which I studied through the Forest Service information site on how plants respond to fire, and all these plants respond, of the native plants respond positively. Unfortunately, some of the non-native noxious plants also respond positively. There's a nice drone shot of the area. You can see how nicely that burn is coming on. This is a shot of the area that we propose burning here. Not the entire shot, but a good portion of the area of lone pine where we will do the fire. We have come in already and you'll see those trees throughout the middle of this. We've pruned those up so that we will not lose those in the fire. And we've also have some nice, got that old road right down the center, some nice control lines, some things that we can really use to let this fire just back into the wind. Schedule of activities, October 2021, burn additional acres on private land. That did not occur for a variety of reasons. In winter 2022, prepare the burn. Spring of 2022, burn up to, not to exceed 17 acres of lone pine and additional acres of private ownership. Which takes us to the forest land treatment portion of it. And I don't really want to get into that right now. What is missing from this slideshow is, and I apologize, I have pictures of how decadent these bunches can get when they are not burned. And what you'll get, to use a term everybody's familiar with who has a lawn, and that is you get that thatch buildup from your lawn as it is cut or dies, and you begin to get that thatch, and people will dethatch their yard in the spring to rejuvenate their lawn. These bunch grasses have roots that will go down as far as 3 feet. If the interior of those bunches turns to a dry thatch, it is, first of all, no longer useful to wildlife. And second of all, if that thatch burned at the wrong time, will actually kill the plant because it'll go into the root system. That is why you don't really want a wildfire to go through these areas in, say, July, August, September. You'd really rather have what we call a cool fire moving through, killing the top, but leaving that root still moist and still intact. So I apologize for not having that picture of the decadent bunch grass in there. But that's the proposal. And the research indicates that by year 3 following prescribed fire in this habitat type, you will have totally recovered the vegetative mass that you burned off, if you know what I mean. You're now getting those plants after 3 years will now be up to speed with the plants that were not burned, and you will have reached an equilibrium of the amount of herbiage, so to speak, that you burned during the fire. Okay, what else?
Oh, I'm going to stop the screen share.
So had we gone through the entire slide, the very last slide in there is a picture of, you don't want to see me that close, a picture of a deer, a baby deer that had to be, my estimation, hours old. I was walking through there. I was in the process of putting my foot down. I looked down and there's a little deer and I had to literally almost fall over so I didn't step on it. I went around and took a couple far shots of it. I didn't really want to disturb it. But just shows you that they use that for bedding. So an argument could be made, well, Rick, if you burn that, where are they going to bed? Well, if you go back to those earlier pictures, we're touching at most 17 acres, which is maybe, 5% of, if you look at the whole greater grassland from those first pictures I took, we're barely touching that. The deer will have, no, sorry, Brian. The deer will have plenty of bunch grass available for them to do for that purpose.
Great.
And arguably they'll have better grasses. It'll be more, the fertilized, nutritious grass that's fresher and not so much of the dead brown mixed in there.
Thank you, Holly. That's an excellent point. The dead brown, there's no nutrient value. It's that green, and I'm not a range scientist, but I'm very interested in this bunch grass community because I believe it has such high wildlife value, among other values, aesthetic being one of them. Just go out to Wild Horse Island when the arrowleaf balsam root is in bloom. But Holly makes an excellent point. If that grass gets too old, it's no longer palatable. In other words, ungulates, deer, elk don't really want to eat it. Doesn't taste good. Or it's just too rough in their mouth. And the nutrient value is best when it's green and earlier in the summer. So excellent point, Holly. Thank you.
Yeah, really good information there, Rick. Thank you very much for walking through all the really benefits that this could have for the park. Would maybe Dave, this would be something maybe you could touch on. Could you explain a little bit about what goes into prescribed burns and how fire crews go about conducting those projects, what factors they look at in terms of weather and conditions, and also what safety measures look like for them?
Yeah, so a prescribed burn for DNRC, it starts off on paper. We do a lot of analysis on fire behavior with the fuel models that we are planning to burn in. We talk about control lines. And of course, that generates maps. And we use a program called Behave that will model certain types of fuel models. Unfortunately, Behave doesn't work real well with grass models. So we had to do some of our best guess to model this type of burn. But after the burn plan has been written, then it's reviewed by several qualified people, burn bosses. And once it's passed their look through, then we're ready to take action and implement the burn plan. The day of the burn, typically the burn boss, we have a structure put in place in the plan, and the burn boss would be the person that is in control of the actual burn. We have igniters who will actually ignite in certain patterns depending on the fuel models and the weather conditions and the topography. And then we'll have a holding portion on that burn plan. And all of those entities are in place the day of the burn. The weather is usually taken, we'll do what we call spot weather, 12 hours to 24 hours in advance. That is a prediction for the next day of the burn. So I would expect we would be out there the day before the burn doing a spot weather that will give us a fairly prediction. It's an hourly prediction of winds, relative humidity, which is the amount of moisture in the air, and that will play with the fire behavior, if you will. It will also give you an idea of overcast conditions and, of course, winds, which are a big deal when we're laying out a control burn. And then that day, if everything's a go, we have the right winds, we have the right weather, we have all of our tools in place, all the people are in place to implement the burn. Then we'll do a test burn, and we'll take a little bit of that area and we'll light it on fire and take a look at how it behaves with those conditions, weather, the topography, the fuel model, and then we'll go from there. If it's a go from that, then we'll conduct the burn, and afterwards we'll have a good day. So that's a real brief way of doing it. Is that what you were looking for, Dylan?
That's excellent. Yeah, really helpful for folks to kind of understand how a prescribed burn project works, and how a lot of work goes in preparing, and then the day of, and then monitoring it afterwards. So really great explanation on that. And approximately, what should folks expect, whether they're neighbors or members of the public who see us burning up there? How long is the anticipation for this project to go potentially?
Well, I would say the burn shouldn't take longer than maybe an hour to 2 hours. The holding of it and the mopping up after we get done with igniting, another hour to 2 hours. I anticipate the smoke will be intense during the actual ignition part of the burn, and it will, as the grass. Rick has some excellent pictures of the burn they did last year. As that flaming front burns through that fuel, the grass model, it will be intense, and the back end of it will be very mild. The smoke hopefully will be lessened, and I'd say very diminished by the end of the evening. We'd be gunning for trying to ignite this in the morning. Typically our winds kick up in the afternoon, and we'll be in a holding pattern by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If all goes well, 2 or 3, we'll be in a holding pattern, mopping up, very small amount of smoke. And I'd say by 2 days, this fire, after the burn, 2 days, this fire will probably be dead and out. And that's conservative. So
Excellent. Great information. Thank you, Dave. So just as a reminder, this project is out for public comment. We're seeking input from the public on this proposal through March 27th. You can email your comments to Brian Schwartz. You can mail them. You could drop them off at our Fish, Wildlife and Parks office in Kalispell. All that information is laid out on our Fish, Wildlife and Parks website, or you can call us at the office here in Kalispell for more information or to comment through March 27th. And just really appreciate the hard work of DNRC that they've put into this project, and lots of information available for anybody wanting to learn more. But any closing thoughts from anyone else, or anything we missed that others would like to bring up?
I should have just said that at the beginning when everybody said how much work Rick put into this. I think he's referred to this as his master's thesis once or twice. So, yeah, it's been a pleasure to work with him. Oh.
Yeah, well, really I think this will be a cool opportunity too for the greater Flathead Valley to learn about the benefits of these prescribed burn projects. And you just look at some of those pictures that Rick showed, and how much native grasslands especially can really benefit, but also our wildlife can benefit. And I think the visitors who love Lone Pine State Park are going to see the benefits over time. So Rick, really hats off to you for using one of our flagship state parks as a model for showcasing prescribed burn benefits.
Dylan, just let me insert this, that you're exactly right. Part of the goal here, there was actually 3 aspects to it, but one of them was, by doing this, could we not encourage private landowners to start to do it also?
Absolutely. Yeah, really, I think a good showcase. Just those pictures speak for themselves in many ways. So very cool. We'll really encourage anybody who's watched this webinar to reach out to us at Fish, Wildlife and Parks or our partners at DNRC if you're interested in learning more about this project or prescribed burns or any other potential collaboration available to you to help make something like this happen. But again, the comment period for this proposal is through March 27th. And really appreciate, although we didn't have many people plugging in live, I'm sure we'll get lots of views afterwards. So thanks everybody for joining us tonight and providing the information.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Dylan.
Thank you, Dylan.
Brian.
Yeah, have a great
Thanks,
night.
Dylan. Good job, man.
Thanks. Great to see everybody. Nice to meet you, Holly.